As of right now, the maggots are replacing reaganism, and the Republican Party drops Reagan's revolution for Donald Trump's culture wars. As the GOP presidential primary campaign gets underway, it's gonna be fucking fascinating to see how the Republican Party has changed since Donald Trump descended onto the scene back in 2015. Really hasn't changed. That they're gonna be the same assholes as they were back in 2015. Ever since the successful White House runs of Ronald Reagan, virtually every Republican that ever tried to seek higher office had called themselves conservative, and they hewed to the Reagan revolutionary ideology that's described as a three-legged stool, and that centers global leadership and a strong national defense, traditional family values, low taxes, and small government, which they're the exact opposite now. But within that framework, there were minor differences on specific issues, but generally speaking, in order to win the GOP nomination, it was required that Republican candidates adhere to that basic philosophy, which they do not now. Um, Now, in hindsight, it's clear that this may not have been the huge winner because the Republicans assumed it would be, since the party's nominee has won the popular vote for squatter only one time in 35 years. But for decades, it was an article of faith in the political establishment and among the mainstream media, as well as the Republican Party itself, and that those policy priorities were held by a majority of the American people. Now, however, over time, and through several incremental changes that were hard to see at the time, the Reagan's conservative movement became a shell of its former self. But the right-wing populism, popularized by talk radio host Rush Limbaugh, and then foes Bill O'Reilly and ultimately Donald Trump now, defines the Republican Party. Now, the main characteristic of what we are now calling the maggot movement is the hysterical culture war issue of the day. Whether it be talking about immigrants allegedly taking over American society with the unacceptable foreignness of the educational system, evolving with the multicultural society that the U.S. has become, modern Republicans are obsessed with grievance and backlash. We've recently learned that they are also insular and self-segregated in the right-wing media silos, that they refuse to accept any facts to interfere with their worldview, and the Republicans literally cannot handle the fucking truth. And this came to light most recently with their reaction to the reports that faux executives and personalities knew that Joe Biden Joe Biden legitimately won the election in 2020, but they felt obligated to tell their audience that he didn't for fear of losing them to the competition. The network had reportedly wanted to untether itself from its unethical relationship with Trump, but found that it would lose money if it did, so executives backed down. A faux spokesperson said in a statement that Dominion mischaracterized that record, and they cherry-picked quotes stripped of key context. Now, Variety had commissioned a poll last week to find out whether or not the revelations in the faux story have affected their audience, and unsurprisingly, for the most part, 60% of the viewers who have heard about it don't give a fuck. I'm frankly surprised that many are aware of the scandal since the network hasn't covered it. Of that 60%, 21% of them said that they trust the network less after seeing the evidence. However, I don't fucking know that we can assume the means that they trust it less because the network didn't tell them that the truth, basically, because, Faux never tells the truth anyway. And we already knew that Trump had lost the election. Maybe they trust it less because the fake faux stars don't really believe that Trump won the election. But I suspect that there are more than a few of that 21% who are upset about the latter. 9% said that they were watching faux less now than that they knew about this, while others said they were watching more for some reason. I can't figure out why anybody would watch faux, and perhaps they respect the fake faux celebrities and the fake faux executives for being liars. 17% of those who heard about the lie said that they now believe the 2020 election was not stolen because it never was. Now, 57% of those who know about it are still convinced it was, because they're fucking inbred. Now, Trump's big lie lives on, and it seems that absolutely nothing will persuade them otherwise. It does not appear that any of Trump's rivals are going to even attempt to address the issue because they don't want to alienate Foe, their main conduit to the GOP base, so that's probably as good as it's going to get. At this point, I'm actually more interested in the new big lie that's forming around the January 6th Klan insurrection. Unlike the 2020 election, where skeptics could say that the process was obscure or that those in charge were engaged in subterfuge and fraud, which there was hardly any fraud anyway, January 6th happened on television screens all over the world in real time. And there are many hours and hours of footage taken by participants on the internet, and hundreds of trials taking place in the federal courtrooms in which in which not one January 6th defendant has been found not guilty, and that there could be any dispute about what took place that day is mind-boggling. It is unsurprising that some people would suggest that there were plants in the crowd who incited the riot, which there wasn't. That's almost a cliché, but to contend that there was no riot at all is simply deranged. And yet that hasn't stopped the racist piece of shit Tucker Carlson from making that case, nor has it stopped millions of Trump sycophants from throwing their last prestige of normal brain function out of the window. Now, the GOP House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's gift to Carlson was the House security tapes from that day so that he could cherry-pick certain scenes, and it was an extremely audacious maneuver, and it seems to have worked to convince a significant number of faux viewers that what they saw that day with their own eyes never happened. It's a full-blown mass delusion. Donald Trump is running with this new narrative, claiming that the investigations into the events of that day are a witch hunt, which it's not, and that the January 6th defendants are political prisoners, on which they're not either. He has promised to pardon all of them if he is elected squatter again in 2024, and they don't need a pardon, they need to be rotting in jail. Now, as with the big lie, the rest of the candidates aren't exactly jumping up to contradict his new narrative. Sure, they are on record saying the balance was wrong back when it happened, but most, like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, are trying to walk a fucking fine line with remarks like this on the first anniversary of January 6th and playing down the significance. They're going to take this and milk this for anything they could to try to be able to smear anyone who ever supported Donald Trump. And when they try to act like this is something akin to the September 11th attacks, that is a fucking insult to the people who were going into those buildings. And the last thing that you would want to do is insult those very fine people who were beating cops over the head with flagpoles and chanting "Hang Mike Pence." Of course, most of the voters that the Satanist is trying to attract are now convinced that none of those things ever happened, because according to the racist piece of shit Tucker Carlson, the police were actually leading the peaceful protesters on a guided tour of the Capitol that day. There was nothing peaceful about that, and I don't think they were ever leading them into the building. All Republicans running for office are going to be required to parrot these lines to some extent in 2024, because Trump and his sycophantic accomplices in the House and at Bo have declared it to be the official MAGA doctrine. If they want the votes of the Republican base, they're going to have to run on the new official GOP slogan. You can believe me, or you can believe your fucking lying eyes, and it fits perfectly on a fucking bumper sticker on the back of your fucking car. If you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. You can go ahead and leave a comment, let me know what you think. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. For just as little as a few bucks a video or a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.